Hello. Now that I've marked out the beds, I'm going to plant some beans in the first bed. Sowing beans is exactly the same process. And this year I'm growing French beans, runner beans and a couple of varieties of broad beans. I'm growing purple cascade French bean, runner bean firestorm, broad bean red epicure and broad bean masterpiece green long pod. You can put beans straight into the ground, or you can grow them indoors and transplant them. This year, because the allotment is full of weeds and everything, there's no way I can expect these beans to fight through all that. So I'm going to grow them in pots till they're a fair size and then transplant them. Regardless of the type of bean, you do exactly the same thing. You plant them about 5 centimeters deep, depending on whether it's broad beans, runner beans or French beans. Obviously the spacing varies, but the actual planting is exactly the same. So I'm going to start with the broad beans and I'm going to put them in these are 15 centimeter wide pots. So then broad beans need to be about 10 centimeters apart, so I can get two to one of these pots. When I transplant them out, take them out of these pots and put them into the ground. First I dug a trench that was the same depth as the pots. As you can see, I can put a pot in and the broad beans are at the same level as the ground. As the broad beans have been in the pots for a long time, waiting for me to clear the ground for them, they've started to flower and produce pods whilst they were still in the pots. So I will harvest some of these pods, and that will reduce the likelihood of transplant shock as they go in the ground, because they're going in quite late. Before I plant the beans, I'm adding a little bit of fish blood and bone to the soil that is under the beans. Normally I would have preferred to have added manure beforehand, but I just haven't had the time this year, so this will have to do. There's a modest harvest of quite a lot of black currants, a few red currants, and raspberries and a few strawberries. Now there were more raspberries, but very few of them actually made it into the box. And there's nothing like eating a fresh raspberry straight off the bush. And a few broad beans as well. Not a huge harvest, but at least it's a start. Some modest beginnings. And some of the fruit made it into my porridge in the morning. I bought a bag of jacket potatoes, and there was one little runt left at the bottom of the bag, and it just sat in the cupboard and it started to chit, so I thought I'd bring it in, just put it in and see what happens. I mean, it's early July, so we might just get something out of it. Right, I'm going to add some fish blood and bone to the soil at the bottom, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to do much. And then I'll put the potato in and cover it with soil, followed by some mulch. It's going to rain later today, so I'm not going to bother giving it a really good water, just a bit to start it going, and then that's it. We'll see if it comes up. Well, the bean bed is in. I put in half a bed of broad beans and the other half is a trellis of French beans and runner beans. Well, that's the beans planted. In the next video I will sort out the roast bed and I will do a bit more clearing around the front of the plot.